A lot of times relational issues are childhood issues in disguise.
Yeah, I think you're spot on.
Many problems are so fixable. You can heal a lot of things to have more of a relationship than you ever thought possible. The problem people have is that they feel like, I don't want to hurt this person. And at the same time, they're not thinking about what matters in this friendship to me. So it doesn't sound like a great friendship if the other person is telling you, no, you actually feel this other way. So you want to talk about, are you interested in being friends with me? Because I'm not interested in anything else. And part of being friends with me is hearing what I have to say and believing me. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to have a friendship that's healthy. So if you want to be in my life, I would like to be in your life. If you want that, then I need you to believe me when I tell you this is how I feel and not try to push me into something that doesn't feel comfortable to me. And then that person can really think, do I want this person in my life? Knowing this is their hard boundary. But people don't say it that way. They feel like I'm going to hurt this person, or they start arguing with the person. If you find yourself arguing with someone about how you feel, that's not a great friendship. I have so many clients who come into therapy and they'll say, we had this conversation, and they'll tell me this conversation that went on and on and on and on. And I'm thinking, how did this conversation go on? Were they there for 5 hours? What happened? And it turns out they'd been texting for days about it.
Yeah.
And I said, why didn't you just have this conversation face to face? And they say, well, that would have been too hard. But look how hard it is to have it on text. I think it's so much harder to have it on text, because when you're together, you're actually connecting, even if it's difficult, even if you're saying some things that might cause some discomfort. It's easier actually to do it in person. People establish patterns in a relationship very early on. I always say that relationships are like cement. So in the beginning, there's a little flexibility. So the other person is texting you when you want to have a conversation. You can kind of mold that by saying, hey, let's talk in person. But if you keep texting them, then the cement dries, and that becomes the pattern in the relationship with anything. So many people put up with a lot at the beginning of a relationship because they think this person has all these other great qualities. So what if they can't really have a conversation with me, right?
Yeah.
I have so much fun with them, or I can fix them, or over time I'll bring this up later, but I don't want to bring it up now because we're early in the relationship. No. That's the time you should bring it up, because the cement is drying and it dries quickly. So patterns get established. So if the cement is dry and then you try to change it and say, let's have a face-to-face conversation, but you guys have been texting about things for months instead of talking about them, it's really hard to change that. And I know it's hard to do in the moment, but to be able to just make that shift in the relationship and say, you know what, I know we've been texting about this stuff, but I think it'll be so much better for us and so much easier to talk about this in person.
Yeah.
And then you see, will the other person show up? Will they keep texting you, or will they say, sure, let's get together, let's talk about it? A lot of times relational issues are childhood issues in disguise, and even with social anxiety. So for example, if you have a story that you've been told when you were younger, like, I'm not good enough, or I don't measure up, or, people are going to criticize me, whatever your experience had been, you're going to project that onto all of your relationships as an adult. So social anxiety is usually something about, I will not be liked. I will not be loved. And that has to do with how you were liked or loved when you were younger, if you haven't processed that and worked that out. I also think there's a difference between being an introvert. I'm exactly like you in the sense of, I really like to have these deep conversations, and I'd rather be with fewer people and have a deeper connection than be with more people and have a more superficial connection. But at the same time, I feel like it's one thing to say, I would rather have these sort of smaller, more intimate conversations, but I'm not anxious going into them. And so I think what you're talking about with social anxiety is, I'm anxious to just reveal the truth of who I am to anybody. I'm worried about showing up and being found wanted. When people feel anxious, they feel like they have to tell a story that's entertaining. Yeah. They have to keep the person from being bored with whatever they're talking about. People like to talk about themselves. So if and I don't mean that in kind of a narcissistic way. I mean that people like it when you show interest in them. And a lot of people don't ask other people about themselves enough.
Yeah.
So when they have an opportunity for a person who genuinely is curious, This isn't just some kind of strategy for your social anxiety. It's actually a way to relate to people. Mm-hmm. I'm genuinely curious to get to know you, and you ask questions about their life. They're going to be really interested in interacting with you. This reminds me of this saying, you don't choose a partner a la carte. You can't just order up all the qualities that you want. I want them to be sensitive, and I want them to be kind, and I want them to be super driven and ambitious. And I want, you get what you get, and there's going to be all these different qualities. And if that's really important to you, and you are going to feel like, I want to change this person, then that's doomed. That the person is who they are. Now, it's different if the person says, I'm working on this for myself. This is something that I'm trying to do. This is my area of growth right now. I want people to kind of let go of some of the things that research shows doesn't matter for a happy, lasting relationship. And I want people to have higher standards, ironically, about what does. So the character issues. Is this person a kind person? The two most important predictors of whether a relationship will succeed are emotional stability. Do you both have emotional stability? Are you whole in that way? I don't mean like you're finished, right? I just mean that you can self-regulate. You can have a conversation. You don't act out in egregious ways. You're honest, those kinds of things. And the other one is flexibility. It's really hard to be in a relationship with someone who's very rigid. I think about that saying, in the first 3 months of a relationship, you're not you, you're the ambassador of you. Yeah. So it's very hard to know and everybody's on their best behavior. But I think that people, you're still having a lot of deep discussions in those first 3 months because you feel this incredible vulnerability and intimacy. And people will tell you a lot of things that maybe you don't want to hear. So they are these red flags, and you kind of block them out. Mm-hmm. You think, oh, well, that's okay, or I'm not going to pay attention to that. You project onto them who you want them to be as opposed to who they actually are. Sometimes we think about boundaries as, I'm going to make this request and you're going to do it. And if you don't do it, then you have broken my boundary. That's not how boundaries work. Okay. Boundaries are about, and I think this is a really important point related to this, which is that when you set a boundary, you're deciding for yourself what you will do, not what the other person will do. And the other thing about boundaries is that people think that boundaries separate you. The point of the boundary is to bring you closer. I want to be in relationship with you, but we need to have these boundaries. I remember somebody wrote into the column, a parent wrote in and said, my daughter has all these boundaries about how many times I call her during the day. And she said, I'm setting a boundary. And he wrote in and said, I don't want to have a boundaried relationship. And I wrote back and I said, every relationship is a boundaried relationship. You can't just do whatever you want in a relationship. Yeah. All relationships have boundaries. It's kind of like the difference between being in an ocean with no boundaries or being in a fishbowl where the boundaries are too tight and people can't live. You want to be in an aquarium in relationship. Right? So there's enough room for each person to kind of have their space, but it's not so constrained that like everybody's walking on eggshells, and it's not so open like an ocean where you can just do whatever Why are you trying to get this person to do something? Why don't you find someone who is willing and interested in the kinds of things that you're interested in a relationship? And so then there's usually some old stuff there about, what we call repetition compulsion, which is you find someone who is unwilling to give you what you need or want, which is maybe some old stuff. And then you think like, I'm going to do it with this person because this time I'll win. This time I can make it happen. I couldn't make it happen when I was a child, but this time I'll win, except you won't win. It doesn't happen that way. The way you win is you let go of that. You grieve what you didn't get, and then you go find it in someone without trying to change that. So you're not trying to win anything. It's already there. The kindest thing you can do is to have a conversation with somebody that is real and genuine and authentic. I think that the way you start that is you start it with yourself. So before you even get to the other person, you want to be able to say to yourself, I'm being really kind and I'm remembering their humanity, and I'm going to have this conversation in an open, generous, curious way. So I'm not here to set my agenda necessarily. I'm here to be curious about their experience so we together can come to some kind of understanding about each other that we didn't have before. And I think that's the framework that you come into any hard conversation with. I think the question is, are they, when we think about what compromises we have to make with another person, we don't tend to think about what compromises somebody has to make to be with us, which is a really important point.
So
it's not
good.
like, I think people treat dating like shopping. Like, I want this. I'm going to go find this. And it's not like the clothes when you're shopping are going to be like, I don't think you're going to look good in that. Or I'd rather be with someone who looks differently. Like, the clothes are not judging you. We have this weird idea that this unconditional love, and it's just, they misuse that term. So I think we have to remember that as we are thinking about this whole human being, this person is choosing us with all of our annoying things, our quirks, maybe our past that we haven't really worked through, that we're still working through. And, we have this idea that, I'm shopping for someone. You're not shopping for someone. It's, how do I feel with this person? That is the most important question you can ask. How do I feel when I'm with this person? I think that people make this binary. I'm either going to pursue my dream and give up everything else, or I'm not going to pursue my dream. And I always say to people, you can have two things going at once. It's a lot safer to say, I'm going to try comedy and I'm going to put everything I have into it, but I'm also not going to maybe leave my job yet. Mm-hmm. And so I can see whether this really works for me or not before I give up this other thing. So it doesn't have to be so binary. One of the things that happens when you journal is you go into this space that you don't go into when you're not writing it down. When you actually can see something, it's very different from thinking it. Our thoughts are fleeting. They just move around. They're very disorganized. And the thing about journaling is no one's judging it. No one's seeing it. It's just for you. And it just takes 5 minutes. A lot of people will wake up in the morning and journal just to clear their minds. Many of us will wake up and the first thing we do is we look at our phones and already we're stressed. And already we're thinking about, oh, I didn't do this or I'm behind already. It's not a good way to start your day. I love taking 5 minutes in the morning to just write down so that then it's out there and I don't have to sit with it all day long. A lot of people also will do it right before bed because you know how sometimes we'll just think all these thoughts before bed and it keeps you up at night and you can't sleep. You journal before bed and now you feel like, oh, I'm all cleared out. There's an intimacy to that dailiness. There's a comfort. There's a safety of this person knows all these little quirks about me. We have all these inside jokes. We have a shorthand. This person asks how my day is. I know, it's the dailiness of being with someone. Mm-hmm. So you lose that. That's very lonely. But then you also lose the future. You had built up a whole story about what your lives were going to be like in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Gone. And you have nothing to replace it with right now because you don't know what it's going to look like yet. So the grief is real. And I think people try to downplay it. They're like, why are you so sad about this? He was a jerk or she was a jerk or whatever. It's like, I'm sad because I lost something very important to me. And your friends need to realize that instead of just demonizing the other person. They need to realize like you lost something really valuable in your daily life, in the present, in the future, part of your past. All of that is gone now. So that's really hard. I think the other part of then dealing with the grief is letting yourself feel it because it's real. No matter what people tell you, it's real. And the other part is the story that you're telling yourself about it is really important. So you might be telling yourself a story of the other person's terrible. That might feel good in the moment. It might be something like I'm bad. Like I'm not good enough. If I were only something else, this person would love me more, or I'm not lovable, or I'll never find anyone. Right? Those are not helpful stories because it's not true. It's you were not compatible with this person for whatever reason, even though you thought you were. If the other person doesn't feel you're the right person for them, you're automatically incompatible.
Yeah.
Right? You can't make it so that, they just don't see it. So we aren't compatible because the other person doesn't want to be with me. I think so many times we get into a new relationship after that and we punish the new person for something the old person did.
Yeah.
Right? Like the old person wasn't truthful with me. So I'm going to check your phone all the time. No, don't put someone in jail for a crime they didn't commit.